Welcome to the Cowboy Up Podcast, where talk is all about the West. This episode is brought to you by White Stallion Ranch and produced by Cowboy Spirit USA. So what do you think? It's almost officially summer. Time for a road trip? Photojournalist Terrence Moore's recommendation is to find your way to Route 66. He joins Russell and Alan to talk about what to expect and where best to get your kicks.
Hey, Alan, great to be sitting in the same space with you. It's been 4 weeks I've been gone.
You look like a stranger to me. Glad to see you back, partner.
Do I look older for all my travels?
Yeah, you've grown. Yeah. I won't say older, but grown.
Well, I was cattle drive at Tombstone, and then I was in Georgia for Southern Cross, Great Dude Ranch. IPW, San Antonio, my new favorite city, and then Montana at one of the absolute most jaw-dropping Dude Ranch locations, Averill's Flathead Lake Lodge, and those folks have done a brilliant job. Doug spent a lot of time giving me tours, and it was just an amazing time, and listening to his stories, I was humbled.
Flathead Lake is great.
Yeah, it is.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
spot.
I'd only been there once before, and it was so good. But, of course, I was traveling by plane. I like to take road trips, too. How about you?
Yeah, and that, of course, brings up our guest. We're going to talk about Route 66 today, and that is road trip. Road trip, deluxe.
Yeah.
So, I've had a lot of really good road trips, and when I was growing up, our family did it every summer, a road trip somewhere, and I didn't realize what a highlight that was till I look back on it.
Yeah, we took our annual trip down to Mexico, of course, by vehicle, but not those big road trips. My wife Laura loves them, and we do too. So maybe we're going to have to do Route 66. I think it's the most iconic highway in the U.S. Today, our guest, Terry Moore, began his career as a photojournalist in 1970. He's a native of Minnesota. He's traveled the American West extensively, doing photography, selling pictures to magazines and newspapers. He's always been particularly fascinated by Route 66. His book, 66 on 66, beautiful photo book. It includes 66, of course, hence the title, of his favorite images, and he had a lot to choose from. He's done pieces on other U.S. highways. He's acquired a photographic collection of interesting signs and neons. And, it's funny how that's really, you see now in Tucson, they won't even, I think maybe it's even an ordinance. They won't knock those down, and that's terrific. His vintage photos of Route 66 can be found at the Collier Gallery in Phoenix. And I think we were talking about the museum in the airport. You have a big exhibit. So we're really happy to have you here, Terry. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here. It's fun to meet you all.
How did you get hooked on travel, and route where you are on, your interest in life?
It was a combination of things. My father died when I was quite young, and my mother remarried. We're from Duluth. My mother remarried, and she married a fellow from Minnesota, but he lived in California. So we decided it was time to go. So we moved to California. And on that trip, we actually came down Highway 54, which ran technically from El Paso to Chicago. We came down through the panhandle of Oklahoma and down to Tucumcari and got on 66. So I'm a little kid, sitting in the back seat. And this is all new to me. I'm from the Northwoods and the Lake Country and all of that. So we're listening to Hank Williams and heading west. And, and I got to Albuquerque and I started looking at the kids, and I'd never seen kids like that before. They were a different color, and it was just fascinating to me. The music was, the landscape, the cultural differences, because, you know, where I was raised in that era, there were no people from anywhere else, you know, except, you know, Northern
What's your
Europeans.
ethnic background?
Well, I've got a lot of German and French in me, but mostly Scandinavian.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so anyway, it's pretty homogenized, you know, and in that sense. So anyway, to make a long story short, my stepfather, we used to travel back and forth a lot between Minnesota and California, and we'd always take a different route. You know, sometimes we'd go to Montana, sometimes we'd go to North Dakota, sometimes we'd swing around through Wisconsin. And then he loved driving. This was in an era where people loved driving often. So we would just drive around on weekends and look at things. And then we'd take these extensive road trips every summer. So that made this kind of indelible mark on my psyche. And it was all pre-interstate America then, you know, so it was a very different kind of place.
Well, and it really kept you in touch with the places you went through, which the interstates, we love their efficiency, but they strip away a lot of that. And
Right.
but so that's the road trip side. How did you land in photojournalism?
As a young fellow, we had a neighbor that was a documentary photographer, and in that era, you know, he used to travel all over the world and do really interesting mainly cultural things. Like he'd go to the Amazon or wherever, and I was really intrigued with all of that. So when I was maybe 12 or so, you know, I got my first little camera, but my goal really was to do documentary film.
Early on.
Early on, that's what I wanted to do. But I never really, at that point, never bridged that gap. So I took a lot of photos as a kid, but then in high school I got involved with other things, you know. I was working and so forth, and I kind of shied away from photography, but I always liked it. And then I went to school, and they didn't really have a photography department where I went to college, but so I was always interested in places and people and that kind of thing. So I took geography. I was a geography major. And then I had a girlfriend who was very arty. And she was really into photography and visual arts. And she said, you know, you've always been interested in this. You should think about it. You know, so, you know.
She directed you to your goal in life then,
yeah,
huh?
She did in a way,
Yep.
you know. There were a couple other people as well, but she got me going, and I'm very happy because as soon as I got out of college, I said, well, what are you going to do now? And I basically went back to what I wanted to do when I was 12.
And where'd you go to college?
At San Diego State.
Mm-hmm. Your book is really an art book. I mean, it's beautiful photos. Doesn't talk a lot about the history or the background on Route 66. Is that something you're able to fill us in a little bit? Why did it become the iconic highway?
Well, it's a variety of things, but I think the thing that really put it on the map was the Dust Bowl and all the refugees going to California, and then Steinbeck, you know, his book Grapes of Wrath, and the movie, and and he kind of coined the phrase "the Mother Road," and you know, all the Hokies were going to the Promised Land. And all those phrases have stuck. You know,
So what attracted you to all that? I mean, that exists, you're right. But then how did you latch on to that?
Well, I moved to New Mexico soon after I kind of got my feet on the ground. And then I lived in Old Town, and I was a half a block off of Route 66, and it had just been bypassed. So Central Avenue had become kind of a place where it was dead. You know, the buildings were still there. And then a lot of the old trading posts and things were still around the perimeter of town.
Abandoned.
Yes, yeah. So I went out and started photographing those just for fun. You know, I said, I've got to do something. So that's how I got going in a photographic sense. But then I moved to northern New Mexico, and then I got involved in other work, mostly environmental work. So I just would come back to it periodically. But the thing that became kind of a catalyst for me, I had a writer friend here in town, Tom Pugh, and he had moved out here in 72 from Ohio, and he was going to start a Western magazine and called This Land. It was going to be all different topics about the West. So Tom and I got thrown together, and we really hit it off. And we were chatting, and we had a mutual friend named Alvin Josephi. And Alvin Josephi was a Western historian and writer, and he was the editor of American Heritage magazine. And American Heritage in that era was a quarterly that was hardcover. You may remember it.
I do.
Yeah, it was a wonderful magazine. So through Alvin, we decided we were going to do something on Route 66 because we knew it was on its way out. This was 1976. And Tom and I got together, and I said, well, why don't we do, all these old people are dying off. Why don't we go to California and interview people that had made the trip during the Dust Bowl? So that was kind of how we got really, in the sense of publishing, got into this whole realm of the highway and that. And we interviewed a couple of very interesting people. One was Flossie Haggart, Merle Haggard's mama. And no one knew anything about Flossie. And she was just the sweetest thing. And she still, when they moved, her sister gave them $50. Her sister lived in Oildale outside of Bakersfield. She gave them $50 to get from Oklahoma to California.
That's a good trip.
Yeah, and
probably doable in Dust Bowl era.
Yeah, and her husband got a job with Southern Pacific, and they got a boxcar, and they lived in the boxcar. And when we met her in '76, she had a boyfriend. Her husband had passed away, and she remarried, I should say. And he had a place in Pismo Beach, so we actually met her in Pismo Beach, but she still had her boxcar and still lived in it.
No kidding.
Yeah. And at that point, Merle was getting big. He wasn't huge yet, but he was pretty big. But then there are all those stories about Mama, Mama tried, Mama did this.
Yeah, and he went to prison. So what did he go to prison for, Merle Haggard?
I think it was something kind of petty.
Okay.
I really don't know.
Yeah, I know. It's sort of known he went. So back to the Grapes of Wrath, Steinbeck. What do you call it? The Mother Road? Mm-hmm. Is that what you said? Mm-hmm. And so where did that road drain the people out of? Oklahoma? Was it?
Well, primarily Arkansas, Oklahoma. The epicenter of the Dust Bowl of southern Kansas, even a little bit out of far eastern New Mexico, up by Clayton. The epicenter of the Dust Bowl was Boise City, Oklahoma, which is literally just on the other side of the line from Clayton, New Mexico. Mm-hmm. And
so people went from out of the Dust Bowl to the Gold Coast. Was that the draw?
Yeah, I guess that was the whole point. And of course, we all know a lot of those stories. I mean, those were some hard times.
And that was if I remember correctly, the Dust Bowl era, that was a general drought, but because of certain circumstances, it just crushed that zone, right?
Right. Well, yeah, right. Bigger than that. It had a big effect here.
No, that's what I'm saying. It was a regional drought, but there were reasons, and I don't. But that Dust Bowl that they're talking about was that area you're discussing, right?
That was kind of the center of it. But even my stepdad's family, they were farmers in central Minnesota, and they were dried up.
Yeah.
Just like your folks probably were.
Well, a quick story on that those times were tough all over, and our ranch was the same. And I can remember my dad said, that he couldn't sell cattle because there wasn't any market for them. And so we had a bunch of old cows that got older and older, and he had, 500-600 of them, and he needed to sell them, and he wanted to sell them. But he said he got a buyer out there to look at them, and the buyer said they wouldn't pay the freight to send them to L.A. They weren't worth enough to pay the freight from Lordsburg to Los Angeles, So what do you do then?
that wasn't directly because old cows were going to be beef.
Well, they would have probably killed them at Los Angeles stockyard.
But my point is, it wasn't because they didn't have a market for cows to breed, because they were going to go to the beef market.
Yeah. Right.
So was it because of the Depression or just?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, nobody had any money and nobody could buy anything and nothing was worth anything to sell. And, you had what you had, but it was worth something if somebody would pay you for it. And if they wouldn't pay you for it, it wasn't worth anything, kind of.
And how about the calf market for you at that time, your family?
I think they could always sell calves, but even in my time, I saw a lot of calves go for $25 and $30 a head.
Really?
Off the ranch.
Kidding.
But, hey, that was cash money, so that's better than not.
Wow.
Yeah, but trying to sell old cows, when a calf sells for $30, I'm not sure what the cow's worth, but not very much.
Not the freight, apparently.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's shocking. So we'll take a break, and it's the time we get to hear from our great friend, Stuart Rosebrook. He is the editor of our favorite magazine, True West.
Hey, Russell, it's good to be here. This is Stuart Rosebrook from True West Magazine, and we have got a great summer issue. The July-August 2023 issue has got an exclusive feature this month by historian Paul Andrew Hutton. The title of the piece is Kit Carson and the Conquest of California, and it's the true story of how the Trailblazer became the spear point of empire. It's a extra long feature that we do a few of those each year, and I think our readers are really going to love it. Paul has been working the last couple of years on a new big book, and Kit Carson will be a subject in that book, but this is an exclusive feature he's written just for True West. And the title of his book is going to be called The Undiscovered Country. It will be published by Dutton next year. And it's a big book on the history of the American westward movement. And I really can't wait to read that. Paul's such a great writer. And his last book with the Apache Wars was a big award-winning book. This is also our Heritage Train issue. Every year we feature some of our favorite railroads across the West and across the U.S. where you can go out and bring your family, and they're great for all generations of traveling in the West, and immerse yourself in the local town and really enjoy one of these great historic steam and diesel trains that travel back into time across the West. And it's one of my favorite things and to write about every year. And Peter Corbett wrote a really nice feature on it this time. And we've got some great travel pieces. We've got a piece on Cheyenne, Wyoming. It's time for the granddaddy of them all, the daddy of them all. Great rodeo up there in Cheyenne, and good time to plan to go on up there. And then we have a travel piece on going to Oklahoma and Arkansas, following the Outlaw Trail from Fort Smith out to Guthrie. And that's a good one. Learn a lot about Judge Parker and Bass Reeves, and on the trail of law and order in the Indian Territory. And then I had fun writing a piece this month on the humorists of the Gold Rush, and I think people will find this as a great little surprise. It's called "Did the Devil Make Me Do It?" So I think people will have a lot of fun with this issue, and with some really great reading. And we're looking forward to the fall. We got some great issues coming up, and if people want to subscribe, TrueWestMagazine.com is where they should go. That's TrueWestMagazine.com. And so until next month, I would like to throw this back to Russell and Alan and their good friend Terry Moore, who's one of my favorite photographers of the West, and I know has a big exhibition and is one of his on Route 66, which is something we love to send people out to travel on. And I know that Bob Bell loves the Route 66. He grew up in Kingman. So look forward to hearing from Terry Moore, and I hope the readers get out there on the road and enjoy the West.
Terry, we're really happy to have you talking about Route 66. So,
well, and we want to, while we were at a break and listening to Stuart Rosebrook, Terry has a connection.
Well, Stuart and I go back quite a ways because I met his father, Jeb. coincidentally, we were thrown together. We didn't know anything about either one another, I should say. And we got thrown together by Arizona Highways and to do a story on Route 66. This was 99, and the story actually ran in 2000. So Jeb and I we said hello, and we jumped in the car, and it was like we'd been in the car our whole lives. You know, he's really into country music, and I really like it. And the guy's like a walking encyclopedia, especially Arizona country music, but all of it. And so you just pick a topic. You know, we just had a ball, and we had a really prolific trip. You know, we met Chief Yellow Horse, and
who was he?
Chief Yellow Horse was the P.T. Barnum of the Navajo Nation. You know, he wore his turquoise jocklaws, and he had a bandana tied around his head. And you know, most Navajos are kind of reticent.
Not him.
No, he was in your face, and no inhibitions. And we're talking to him, and you know, I'd never met him before, even though I'd photographed all the stuff he has around there, and cave buffalo and Indian ruins, and we take plastic money, and you know, it was in Lupton, where those red cliffs are. Anyway, he told us this story quickly that we were trying to figure out how he got to where he was, or where he at the time, and this is 99. And he said, well, my mom during the 30s, she set up. Grew up in Hook, which is just down the road towards Sanders, if you're going towards Holbrook, and
this is all on the reservation?
It's on the reservation, but it's actually on 66.
Oh.
So she had a loom on the side of the road, and the kids would all go down there with her and play while she wove little rugs, and then the tourists would stop
and buy.
Yeah, they buy one, you know, for a reasonable amount of money. And so the best part of the story was, I mean, his mom obviously was a hustler. and had a bunch of kids.
In a good sense, she was working.
Yeah, in a good sense. And then so the kicker was that, you know, lasted for him for the rest of his life. She'd say, "Where are you going?" You know, to the travelers, and they go, "Well, we're going to Los Angeles." And they go, "Oh, that's a long way, desert, and hot and dry, and would you like the kids to sing you a Navajo blessing song?" And, you know, of course they'd say, of course, you know. So the kids would line up, and they'd sing this song, and he'd say, it had nothing to do, but it was a Navajo. It had nothing to do with blessing their trip. It was just us singing a song. And then the travelers would give the mom dimes, nickels, pennies, whatever, and then she'd save that money and buy the kids clothes and school supplies and things. That's how he got his start.
Chief Yellow Horse. And so he was one of those kids singing the song that had nothing to do with the road.
No.
But they loved it.
Yeah. They were blessed.
Yeah.
Even though they didn't know it. Anyway, that was just kind of a fun story.
So Jeb Rosebrook he was a screenwriter.
Yes.
And wrote Monty Walsh.
Sorry.
Am I right? Have I got that right? The movie filmed in Prescott.
So, yeah.
With
Junior Bonner.
Junior Bonner, Monty Walsh.
Yeah,
I got it. That's the one down at Mescal. Yeah. Junior Bonner, which was Steve McQueen. It was filmed in Prescott.
Right.
And did you have any interaction on some of that stuff? No.
I was around then, but I wasn't involved in that at all. But I heard a lot of fun stories, and then Jed and I became fast friends after that. We did actually not long before he got ill. We were doing a bunch of road stories for Arizona Highways. We were doing 80.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where we'd take off from Lordsburg and go down to Bisbee. And then we were going to do 89 from Phoenix up to Ashfork, or all the way up, actually. We had a number of them. We did another one on 60, but just the western portion. So we just had a whole series going, but then they changed their hierarchy there. And Bob Early was the guy that really liked Jed and liked his writing. And Bob left. So that was the end of our trilogy of Arizona highways, which would probably have included a piece of 70, you know.
What's next on your agenda? What do you have lined up?
Well, the big thing is to do this new book is going to we're going to use some of the same photos, but we're going to make it a chronological trip from Chicago to Los Angeles. So I need to actually make a trip, get some new material, talk to some new people, hear some new stories. That's in the works. And
well, the old trading posts are kind of going by the wayside, aren't they?
They sure are.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's not much left.
What replaces that? What do you use for grist?
That's a good question. I mean, there are things popping up. For instance, there's a brewery in Flagstaff, and I believe you like beer.
You think?
It's called the Mother Road Brewery.
Yeah.
And if you go up there, that's the new trading post. They don't call them curios anymore. They call it merch. You can buy a cap and a T-shirt and see my photos hanging on the wall there and have a.
And where is that? Because I mean, they've got a few microbrews up there. They've got Grand Canyon Brewery, and
right, yeah,
that one's in Williams, but they've got a few.
There's a number of them in Flagstaff, but this is the big one. I mean, they're
the Mother Road.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're right on the old alignment of the road, which was just south of the railroad tracks.
Right.
They're right there, and it's just fun. Well, in a way, it's replacing. Like these curio stores. There's establishments like that, bars, and then some of the old motels have been restored, like the Wigwam in Holbrook, the Wigwam in Rialto, California. That's the last place left in Southern California, I think. Well, it is the Aztec Motel in Monrovia that was built in the 1920s, and it's a whole Mayan motif, even though it's called the Aztec. It's like the movie theaters. They did it the same era.
Well, this is refreshing because so many people, me included, the interstates have gotten so good. You jump in the car and then you think, I'm going to L.A., and you blank out everything between here and L.A.
You do.
And there's a whole bunch that shouldn't be blanked out, and
Exactly.
I'm loving to hear what you're saying because we as a culture are missing a lot of stuff.
Well, and you're just talking about the trading posts are gone, and part of that's why. No traffic, no business.
Traffic going by, but they're going by at 90 miles an hour.
Or they're in a slightly different. Did you have a favorite? Was there something on 66 when you did the original, all the journeys? Is there something that just, or a couple of them that jump at you?
Well, I'd like to kind of bring this home in the sense of today. Like one of my favorite places is in Arizona. It's the Museum Club.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
I went to ASU one summer and we just hung out there. It was cool and the beer was cold. The girls were cute. The music was good. But there it is. It's still there, and it's an icon. So that's a good example. The Parks store just west of Flagstaff. In Parks, where the original way to get to the Grand Canyon was. On the highway was go straight down 66 to Parks, and at the store you'd turn right and you go north up to the South Rim. And, the new road, goes diagonally across. But that's where the corner was, and that store has been in business there since, I believe, 1909.
At Parks?
Yeah, and it's still there. So
I've never been there. Now I have to look for it.
There's some goodies around that are really special, and I kind of shy away from the new jivey stuff, I kind of try to search that stuff.
Well, your book indicates that. I mean, there's lots of the old stuff and the trading posts and the neon, and you really get a sense. I mean, some of it is obviously past its prime, which is its own charm, but it's really. We mentioned your Phoenix Airport Museum exhibit. It's I guess interactive.
It is somewhat.
Talk about that, because Terminal 4.
Yes. Yeah, it's up now. It's been up a couple of months, and it'll be up through November. And it was really a pleasure working with them. They're very innovative, creative people. And I've got 19 photos. Some of them are quite large. We've got one shot that's 6 feet wide. A lot of them are 3 and 4 feet, so quite large. And then they made a replica of our old station wagon. I mentioned that to you, where you can get behind it and look out the windshield and have your photo taken. So we tried to bring people to the show because you're walking by the concourse and you're thinking about, I've got to make my plane or go to Starbucks or whatever you're going to do. And this is dragging people over there.
You get a lot of feedback from that?
I've gotten a lot of good feedback, but not actually at this point, not what I expected.
Really?
No, but I think I will eventually. I think it's kind of a slow moving wheel. And they don't allow any promotion there.
You can't stand out in front and say, come in here?
Like Yellow Horse.
You need Yellow Horse. Where is he?
Plastic money, okay.
But it almost doesn't matter anymore because, anybody with a smartphone, which is what percentage of the population, can instantly do a search and find you and your stuff.
Right.
How'd they do the station wagon? They did a replica, you said. It's not a real one.
I took a shot just of the front end.
Right.
And they printed that in 2 pieces because it's wide. It's almost life size. And it looks 3-dimensional if you look at it from the front. You can't tell that it's just 1-dimensional.
They put some seats in and you go sit there?
No, there are no seats. You have to kind of scooch down. You go around. And then the thing that amazed me is I went around and looked out, and I looked down, and there was a dashboard.
Huh.
And the dashboard was a photo, and it was from a 41 Ford. And they did that all on their own. I didn't say anything. I said, that's not just a 40s Ford dashboard. That's a 41 Ford dashboard, which was unique.
You and 3 other people know that.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of thing they did. And then when they built this car, and I almost fell over.
Yeah.
I thought, what a cool idea. I want that car to go everywhere with me.
Well, what a nice idea, is I was in a different, I was in that terminal, but not, you said Concourse 3, and I didn't see it. I had some wait time in Phoenix. So it's a big airport. Sometimes you get a big layover. What a great idea that Phoenix Airport, not my favorite airport, but great that they have a museum, and you said great to work with. And so people can look for that Concourse 3, Terminal 4.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And what else are you working on?
Oh, boy. I've got a lot of irons in the fire, and I don't think I'm ever going to finish. I'm trying to re-archive all my work. And I did this. It took me 30 years the first time to just do it physically. And then now I've got to edit all of that.
Is that editing pretty hard? Is it hard to turn loose of some and see what to focus on?
No, that's true. It is, because I'm a sap. I say, oh gosh, I remember that day, or that car I had, or whatever it was. And
then you can't turn loose of it.
No, and I've got thousands of images. So right now I'm trying to edit all of those, scan them, and put them in a digital file.
Where are you going to take them then?
Where are they going?
Yeah. Take it past that, put them in the file then.
Well, hopefully we can do more projects. For instance, I really like neon. I've got a lot of Arizona neon. A lot. That could be a whole nother project. I have things that other people don't have.
I think it's in demand. You see that the neon photography and just
it's become very popular. Yeah.
It really has. You can. It's clearly noticeable. Where can people find your work?
Well, the best thing to do is obviously I like to sell prints, and I make any size, but they're all limited edition, meaning signed by me. They're all archival. The easiest way is to go to Call Your Gallery, or just terrencemoore.com, just my name.
And Call Your Gallery is a bigger production.
Michael Collier is the person, and he has a galleries out of Phoenix.
And he has your stuff.
Yeah, he represents me along with some other people that are pretty well known, like Maynard Dixon.
See, we've heard of him. So Collier Gallery, spelled like you'd expect, Collier,
Yes.
gallery.com.
Yeah, and he's a friend, and he does. You both like his site, and he just specializes in Western art.
Right. And otherwise, they can go to terrencemore.com.
Correct.
And that's TERRENCE, Moore with an E.
Yes.
terrencemore.com. And I've got here in a note something about a discount.
Well, I'd be happy to discount my prints an additional 20% for anyone that's part of your podcast
Audience, yeah.
Yeah, your audience.
That's fantastic.
So anybody just has to mention that, and we'll do it.
Nobody offers us a discount, so you're the first.
So Cowboy Up listeners at terrencemore.com get a 20%. That's super.
Yeah.
Well, and you've got a new 66 book in the future, maybe 24, 25, something like that.
Yeah, we'll definitely have it out either real early 25 or fall of 24. And it'll be lots of stories, probably not a few more photos. We'll probably take a few out of the original edition, add a few, particularly from Illinois and Missouri. And then there'll be stories with every photo. So you could go down the road and kind of relive it. And then it's not just, I love to kind of emphasize the old stuff because I have a fair amount of that. But it's not going to be just that. We want it to be contemporary and where a traveler can have the experience of today and yesterday.
Perfect.
So that's the concept. And Schaffner Press is going to be publishing as a local Tucson publisher and an old friend of mine from New York.
Tim. Yeah, we know him.
Yeah. So
Tim Schaffner.
Yeah, so he's very behind it and
terrific.
Great guy to work with.
We're going to expect to see some of that in the near future.
Yeah. Gives us all some hope to get on the road again and have some fun. And don't forget to stop in Desert Center if you're going to L.A.
Perfect.
What's left of it.
And we'll give and Tim Schaffner Press is going to, so we'll and big supporters of stuff that happen that matter here in Tucson. So, well, thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, you bet. It's been really fun. I think we could go on for a while.
Yeah. We get in trouble because we do. So we're gonna pull the plug and say thank you so much for being our guest here at White Stallion today.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Yeah.
Alan, I love books like I know that Terry's going to have coming up and the book that's already out there. The book that's out there is really a piece of art showing the history. And I'm not a good photographer. Laura is, but I've always thought there was something, I'm not even exaggerating, almost religious about photography because it captures that moment. And while video's fun and interesting and people love it, that those stills that grab a moment, there's something that nothing else can take that place. And Route 66 is such a big piece of our history, and to keep it and memorialize it, it matters.
It sure does. I look at some of those great photographs and I think to myself, why didn't I think of that and take it, and somebody else did, and there it is. And wow, I'm glad it's there, glad to be able to see it.
Photography's art.
Yeah.
Done well.
Absolutely.
Hey friends, glad you could join us and meet Terry Moore. Remember to check out his amazing photos, images available at a 20% discount. A Western shout out to Stan Husted's production team. Next week, our focus remains on America, but instead of roads and highways, it's all about civics, including Sandra Day O'Connor's iCivics. Until we meet again, I'm Lynn Weezy Sneed, reminding you to sit tall and ride safe.